This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it's Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. I'm traveling this week, and so I'm in Nashville attending the National Christian Broadcasters annual convention. It's a big meeting, 3,000 or 4,000 people here, and President Trump is going to speak tomorrow night at the banquet. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I've known him for a long time, and it's always great to hear him speak. You can follow me on X at CorsiJerome1 on Substack. It's JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. We'll be posting more on Substack in coming weeks. Let's cover a few stories here right away that are important. To begin with, this Ukraine story is, I think, now becoming clear that Ukraine is outnumbered, they're outmanned, they're not going to win. What Reuters is reporting is that the war, as it enters the third year with Russia, Russia is winning. The Ukrainian soldiers are increasingly exhausted. They say the motivation's high, but when you read the article, when you read what they're saying, is that 60 to 70% of the several thousand men in one brigade at the start of the conflict are supposedly still serving, but that means that 30 to 40% have been wounded or signed off for reasons like old age or illness. And they continue to try to say that the casualties are high on Russia, but Russia's prevailing and Russia's deeply entrenched. The weather is rain, snow, and I guess mud is dominating a lot of the terrain. Europe is having, like the United States, a warmer winter, largely because of the ocean currents. We have the ocean currents, which are the rise of El Nino or La Nina, and right now the warm currents are coming up in the Pacific, which makes the northern hemisphere having a warmer summer. It is not global warming. We'll cover that in a few minutes. But I think this whole issue of the wanting to continue the fight in Ukraine, which Biden wants to do, and which the EU wants to do, is extremely dangerous. And I continue to highlight that if we do enter the war with NATO attacking or NATO soldiers fighting in the Ukraine, Russia is going to react. Medvedev has warned now twice that Russia will not take kindly to the fact that we are moving, the United States is apparently moving nuclear warheads into Great Britain. And there's reports that some of the artillery units are being manned by NATO soldiers who are wearing uniforms that disguise the fact that they're NATO, but they are NATO soldiers. Now, if NATO decides to go to war, these woke communists that dominate the State Department, the Pentagon, the Defense Department, and the CIA, if they decide to go to war with Russia, which has been the determination of Victoria Nuland in the State Department since it was obvious during the impeachment hearings with Donald Trump over Ukraine that we wanted to push NATO right to the edge of the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union. And whereas Medvedev and the others want to preserve the buffers in Finland and in Ukraine for access for Russia to get to the Atlantic. What Medvedev is saying is if we have NATO push to go to war here with Russia, that it will quickly become a nuclear confrontation. And I continue to fear that what's the agenda here of this insane left, if they can't block Donald Trump any other way, I don't rule out that they would go to nuclear war. I'm beginning to think it's a possibility. I'm beginning to talk about it and think about it. Medvedev has got to be taken very seriously. He knows intelligence that we don't know. I'm sure that Russia is monitoring what's going on with our State Department, our CIA, our Pentagon. And if that's the only October surprise that the Republicans are going to have to fear, I mean, if the Democrats are willing to go to that limits to prevent Donald Trump from being president, it wouldn't surprise me. And no one's told me this. I don't have any knowledge of this being the case. It's just putting the pieces together from what I'm seeing on the international scene. And I know this is what got me in trouble with the Russian collusion investigation. I did not have any contact with Julian Assange during the Russian collusion event, but I knew that Assange had Podesta's emails because I figured it out. I know Podesta. I know that emails were stolen from within the Democratic Party. I tried to tell that to the special prosecutors. They weren't interested. What we're dealing with now is insanity in terms of the abuse of truth. So Donald Trump here with this, let's cover a couple points on this for a moment. Donald Trump with this Judge Engoron. Okay, now this come out yesterday. This is being reported by the Gateway Pundit that Engoron had an affair with the secretary of one of the lawyers, a defense attorney. This judge decided to have a sexual affair with an attorney who was in a case and before the judge. So the law, Lewin said, it's a long story, but there was a suit filed by Helen Che Seeger, who said essentially that there was this affair going on with the judge. The law secretary, Arthur Engoron, claims he only began dating the secretary of the opposing counsel, Christopher Sullivan, on May 10th, but Lewin said Sullivan's actions in the case may have been influenced by information he received from the woman, identified in the papers only as Sue. So there's a lawsuit over this. This judge was involved in a sexual affair that was inappropriate regarding lawyers, the secretary of a lawyer. What the judge has ruled is that Donald Trump has to pay $355 million in fines because he overstated the value of his properties in getting loans for his corporation. Now, the loans were given, the loans were paid, the banks were paid interest. What the judge was mad about and ruled, because Donald Trump had tried to inflate the value of his properties in order to get better treatment on the loan, get better terms. And that's the whole thing is not really a crime. This is a civil matter. But the judge ruled that Donald Trump owes the state $355 million. And the judge appointed a Clinton-appointed judge in control of Trump's business empire in New York State. So this retired U.S. District Judge Barbara Jones is an independent monitor of the Trump business empire. And the judge expanded her authority to review financial disclosures before they're submitted to third parties. All this basis that Trump is overstating the value of his holdings. And this Judge Jones can hire an independent director of compliance. She has the authority to compel Trump to sell some or even all of his businesses down the road. It's all punishment for Trump allegedly committing fraud by falsely inflating and deflating the value of his real estate assets to pay lower state taxes and to receive more favorable loans from the banks. So they're saying that Trump was manipulating the value of his properties, lowering the value to get lower taxes from the state, increasing the value to get better loans from the bank. And the judge considered that to be fraudulent. These buildings that Trump owns, all the properties he owns, have been increasing in value. And this judge is politically imposing these penalties on Donald Trump. The only remedy for this kind of behavior from these judges, as political judge, is to say, we're done with New York. The boycott of New York has begun. This is the Bud Light judge of New York City. And New York is going to suffer if businesses decide that it's not safe to have businesses under the jurisdiction of New York because it's too political. The city is deteriorating, and the risk of politics interfering in legal decisions is too great. That's a sad issue to have happen to the country. Okay, now, having covered the Ukraine war and saying that we're losing, the point I want to make there is that we are not seeing any real action by the Justice Department on the Biden crime family. The corruption in Ukraine is massive, and it doesn't seem to make any difference that the evidence is clear that, Hunter Biden was given favorable deals in Burisma, just as the son of Nancy Pelosi and one of John Kerry's siblings. They're all benefiting from the money in politics, and Ukraine is being kept open, I believe, because the government, our government, wants the money laundering to flow. Again, I point out continuously that you can't run drugs, you can't run international pedophilia. All these crimes require the complicity of the intelligence agencies. And even our FBI, which now has counterintelligence powers, meaning they can go international, not just the United States, are complicit with the criminals while they're punishing political enemies of the state. We have become a Nazi Gestapo. We're not handling crime. The criminals are, in fact, the government. That's what I said when I refused to take Mueller's plea deal. They said I was lying. I had a contact with Assange. I wouldn't tell them. I did not. I said I will not take that plea deal. And they've said, put me in front of a jury in Washington, that would convict me because they hate my politics, and I spend the rest of my life in prison. I told them to put me in prison the rest of my life. I would not swear before God to a lie to keep out of prison. They did not indict me. You've got to say no to these people. This is going to take a spiritual movement to beat these people, because we're dealing with satanic evil. I'm going to make that point continuously through this broadcast. The next story about Israel. Now, Israel has set a deadline for the final move south in Gaza. What Israel has said is that by Ramadan, which is beginning about March 10th this year, Ramadan is one of the high holy periods of Islam. And so Israel is saying that they're going to start this offensive in the southern part of Gaza by the beginning of Ramadan if the hostages aren't all released. Specifically, they're going to launch a full assault in the southern city of Rafah, Rafah. Now, the problem with Rafah is that there are probably 1 million civilians from Gaza who have congregated in Rafah, and there's probably about 10,000 Hamas terrorists and activists who are in that same area. So rooting them out is going to be very difficult. And the idea that they're going to surrender and release the hostages is probably not going to happen. They should, as Muslims, want the citizens of Gaza to be able to celebrate Ramadan, and the clear, logical choice would be release the hostages. But this is not logic. This is hatred. And the Hamas operatives are determined to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. That's why you can't have a two-state solution, because Hamas would just control the government of Palestine, and they would use that as a way again to rearm, restage more terror, and to advance down the road of destroying Israel. Certainly the United States has made it clear, and the EU and the United Nations have all been pressuring Israel to have a ceasefire and to stop attacking Gaza. They did not apply equal pressure when Hamas launched its October 7th brutal, suicidal, massive attack, killing Israelis. And we say suicidal because those that were armed were easily able to kill these terrorists on October 7th. Part of the problem is that the left has disarmed Israel as well. When I was in Israel years ago, the people carried weapons freely through the major cities. They did that because of the possibility of terrorism. There was a lot of suicide bombing years ago in Israel. But today the left wants to imagine that they can make peace with the Palestinians when they don't understand the Palestinians are a radical leftist movement, not the civilians, but the leadership. And the Palestinian Authority has been taken over by Hamas, funded by Iran, as is Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel is facing a regional war today with Iran as the puppet master, the terrorist master, funding Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza and the West Bank. Iran's funding the Houthi rebels, who have now disrupted all of the sea traffic, or most of the sea traffic, commercial sea traffic in the Red Sea, which is going to be costly for world economic trade, because now cargo ships have to go around the Cape of Africa instead of coming through the Suez Canal, through the Red Sea into the Indian Ocean. So to get from Europe to India or China now is much more expensive and takes longer, probably a third more expensive and a third longer. And the shipping is disrupted. This is a regional war. Iran is also funding the Iranian Guard, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, that is in Syria and also in Iraq, attacking U.S. bases. And again, we're on the wrong side. We're basically saying that the Biden administration, just as, if you recall, in the Obama administration, Obama would not declare that Islamic terrorists were an enemy. He would not say that Islam in any capacity was an enemy. Islam is not an enemy, but radical Islam, the terrorists who are committed to violence, the terrorists who are committed to destroying Israel, destroying Christianity, these are the terrorists. And Obama would not, remember all the nonsense about that these were mostly peaceful. Okay, well, Hamas is not mostly peaceful. Hamas is mostly about destroying Israel. Now let's move on to a couple of other stories, because I think this international situation is actually the beginning of World War III. And what I'm saying is I fear it's going to go nuclear, that with the satanic left controlling the institutions in America, our schools, our media, various government agencies, the entire left, the Democratic Party, they will put, these demons hate life. They hate God. And so Satan essentially wants to kill the life that only God can give. And that's satanic. That's pure evil. And as such, the Democratic Party now is supporting a run on women's right to choose, which means more abortion, more late-term abortion, more selling of body parts of fetuses, more putting, I mean, it's just horrendous. And these offenses are enormous. And I'm also very offended by this transgender mass that occurred in St. Patrick's Cathedral, where the church was bamboozled. Someone called up and said they're Catholic and they wanted a funeral, and a funeral mass was granted. Well, the mass was not held. And now St. Patrick's is making it very clear, condemning the sacrilegious transgender funeral, where people, transgenders in thongs and outfits, and being sacrilegious against the saints. If you see any video, we're not going to play the video of it. We're not going to honor this satanic nonsense with broadcasting it. But if you want to search on the internet, you'll see it. And St. Patrick's Cathedral was disgraced by the sacrilege of these demons holding their version of a sacred funeral, which all about Satan. And I really mean Satan. These people are increasingly in the open and Satanist worshipers. It's pretty shocking. It is to me. I never thought in my lifetime I would see this happen. But here we are. Okay, now a couple more stories that I want to cover that I think are extremely important beyond the war. Let's get into the Agenda 2030. There's a good article written. It's kind of an editorial, really, about about how this whole, it's in the Epic Times, and it's by Daniel Lacal. And what he's reporting is that the sustainability agenda of the UN, there's 17 sustainability development goals. Now, sustainability is a key phrase. What it means is, well, sustainable means we have to use less in order to sustain what remains, because, for instance, we have energy. Oil is limited. Peak oil. They thought it was fossil fuel. Oil's not fossil fuel. It's made in the mantle of the earth on an ongoing basis. People aren't reading anymore. I wrote the book, Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. Made it absolutely clear that the equations exist that explain the Fischer-Tropsch equations developed by the Germans in the Weimar Republic between World War I and World War II that explain how oil and other hydrocarbons are manufactured on an ongoing basis in the mantle of the earth. And it can be replicated in a laboratory and has been. So these are not biological products. Oil is not a biological product. So sustainable, though, peak oil, we're going to run out of oil. Only so many dinosaurs, only so many plankton, so we only have so much oil. Well, that again is another false idea. So what this commentary is saying is that the whole idea of sustainability is a Trojan horse. In other words, it sounds good, preserve our resources, use them wisely. But inside it is a weaponized argument. It's like in the Trojan horse, the Greeks were inside the horse warriors to get into the walls of Troy. And so this is a communist agenda, a Marxist agenda, because they're attacking farming, agriculture, use of hydrocarbon fuels, and what they're creating is a predatory zombie state. It looks like the zombie state in Chapter 9 of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. If you ever read that novel, it is a prediction of how totalitarianism destroys a nation, destroys people, puts bonds on people so they become zombies. So the number of farms in the European Union has drastically decreased. According to Eurostat, there were 9.1 million farms in 2020, but there's a projected decrease going forward, and the trend has only worsened. So they're projecting like a 37% decrease over the next few years. The European Commission itself is saying that the agricultural land is shrinking. Okay, now you can't, they're protesting with the tractors in Berlin and in Paris, saying no farms, no food. It's insanity. Again, satanic, they only destroy. These people are depopulationists. The same is going on industry. European industry has plummeted from 21% of all international trade in year 2001 to 14.5%. Well, again, Europe is deindustrializing because, again, they're moving to they're transitioning to wind and solar. So what he writes is that many of us were labeled anti-Europeans years ago for supporting nuclear energy. The EU made agreements recently to create new reactors in large quantities. We criticized the fiscal plunder and bureaucracy placed on farming, agriculture, and industry years ago. We were labeled as anti-Europeans. Many governments are now realizing that they made a grave mistake. Similarly, criticizing the digital euro doesn't mean we're attacking the euro. It means arguing that it should continue to be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power, and should not be digital, which is, again, another form of totalitarian control. So what this article is saying fundamentally, Daniel Lacalle in the Epoch Times, is that the control here imposed on the EU by a bureaucratic state in Brussels and Luxembourg is destructive. And this Agenda 2030 is a way to move us to destroy capitalism and to enter into totalitarianism. I think he's exactly right. And we've been arguing this here for a long time. Again, this is the Truth Central. And we're trying to give it to you very straight. The Exxon, another story I posted, is threatening to take billions of dollars in climate investment out of the EU. The Exxon's just saying that they're not going to go along with these green initiatives, the European Green New Deal, because there's too much red tape in the EU, takes too long to get a project going, the amount of money that the government committed to spend is not forthcoming, And so therefore, Exxon's not going to invest in the decarbonization initiatives that they'd promised because the EU leadership is so messed up that they cannot uh, create a predictable and simplified regulatory environment. It's the same here because we've got these bureaucracies like the EPA, which are making these rules and imposing them. You want to start a business, you've got so many rules, so many regulations that you're bound and restrained. You can't do it. So if the EU is suffering investment and deindustrializing, you're going to see exactly what the woke want, which is the European economies are going to collapse, and it's now built in with the amount of debt they've got. I don't think we'll get through 2024 without a global crash. If we do, it's only because the governments are going to keep printing money to get through this election cycle, both in Europe and in the United States. And they may try to keep things looking rosy in the economy in order to try to reelect Biden, although I don't think Biden will be the candidate. I do still think it's going to be Michelle Obama. And if the Democrats look like they're going to lose, they're going to go insane again. And I think this year's October surprise is going to be a whole order of magnitude greater than what we saw in 2020. Not just, all the shenanigans, Black Lives Matters, Antifa, it went on and on. We'll have the same kind of chaos, I believe, but I think it's going to be even more dramatic. I don't think this deep state can take the risk that Donald Trump might be president again. Okay, I want to go to a few more. This climate change agenda, by the way, and I did post an article on the insanity of the climate change agenda. This again was from the Epoch Times. The Epoch Times has gotten some very good pieces in it. What the insanity of the climate agenda is that it's pure junk science. Pure junk science. One of the articles here demonstrated research that has come out saying that it's going to cost trillions of dollars to have this fixation on carbon dioxide, which is not a driver of the temperature. I've reported on this again in the book on the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. The truth is that if you study geologic time, we had more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere 600 million years ago when we had ice ages through that period of time. And carbon dioxide follows global warming. It doesn't cause it. That has again been demonstrated geologically. But instead of facing the reality, we're facing spending trillions of dollars decarbonizing to technology that doesn't work. The two things that determine this entire agenda is demonic, is satanic, is number one, it's language perversion. It's all aimed at saving the planet or creating social justice. Well, social justice is not woke. Woke is, everything racist is designed to demonize the white race and to say that we can't, that capitalism has caused us to be a inherently evil state, evil society. And when that idea gets into the mind, what happens is that, this Generation Z is largely become dysfunctional. There's articles out again today I saw in searching through the news that the Gen Z are not holding jobs, that they're not really motivated because of the education they've gotten to have the discipline, the study skills, the disciplines to work. Instead, we're filling our kids with this transgender nonsense. Now, the State Department, this story really kind of was amazing to me. Secretary of State Blinken sent out a memo which directed the staff at the State Department to avoid using problematic terms that suggest that human beings are male and female. This is by Tyler O'Neill, another editorial piece. He is the managing editor of the Daily Signal. And he's the author of Making Hate Pay, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has gotten a massive amount of money by calling conservatives hate groups. All right, so Blinken is wanting to make the transgender orthodoxy into the language of the State Department. So he set out a memo that he wants a inclusive work environment. And as such, he does not want the use of, he wants use of gender neutral language. In other words, Blinken recommended, I'll read a paragraph. He recommended the staff avoiding terms like manpower, you guys, ladies and gentlemen, specific gender specific words like mother, father, son, daughter, husband, wife. Instead, you say labor force, everyone, folks, you all, and terms such as parent, child, spouse, or partner, but without saying man and wife, without saying man and woman, even though Blinken himself put out a Veterans Day tweet in which he said, we stand united in honoring the brave men and women who served our country. It's hard to get rid of men and women because, in fact, this gender ideology is nonsense. You can't be whatever gender you want to be. You can't make up your gender. You can't say my gender is an animal gender. You have a monkey who lived 350 years ago. These are insane ideas. And when we get these ideas propagated in the schools, such that the children are being taught, even at a very early age, sexually explicit materials, confusing them on who they are sexually, this is the type of nonsense that is going to ruin our schools and destroy the culture. I've never seen the United States in such disarray. By the way, get this free book. I was looking at it yesterday again, how the coming global crash will create an historic gold rush. It really describes how we've seen gold increase in periods of time like this. And gold has been trading consistently over $2,000 an ounce, which is extremely important because that was a price threshold that once it broke through, it's now in a new trading range, going higher. So the gold price is something I follow very closely. And if you look at the gold price today, let me just see what the current price of gold is today. It's at $2,028 an ounce, up over $2,000. And again, this is something that I think you should really consider. Get this free book. How do you get it? You call 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. Talk to Swiss America. Get a copy of the book. Take advantage of this Walking Liberty half dollar, where you get 250 of these coins, virtually at the price they're worth in silver. And that's a first-time offer, one time only, for new customers. But definitely take advantage of it. You need to have some precious metals while your currency is deteriorating, and they're talking about going to digital currency, which will be the next step into totalitarianism. Chris, I'd like you to comment. I know you're recovering from this cold and cough, but I'd like to have your thoughts on what we've covered today, and then we'll wrap up.
Yes, the thing on transgender speech, you ever notice that it's only for the good words? You ever notice that it has to be chairperson instead of chairman or chairwoman, or spokesperson instead of chair, or spokesman or spokeswoman? They never want to change things like gunman to gun person. They don't want to do that, right? So this is all basically a double standard, if you will. Only the good words get to be gender neutral. The rest of them have to be. I guess you can keep man in them. I guess nobody really wants to call somebody a gun person. Next thing you know, as George Carlin said one time, I'm waiting for somebody to talk about covering a sewage hole with a person hole cover. That's going to happen.
Well, when you get into this kind of nonsense of language perversion, you're fundamentally calling evil good. And what you're doing is you're taking something like social justice, because it sounds like justice is what you want to achieve, and you're fighting for the poor. This is part of the problem with the Agenda 2030. It's designed to make us have perfect lives and abundance and eliminating poverty, when in fact it's going to cause poverty. It's going to cause a lesser industrial state. It's going to kill billions of people. It's why I'm contemplating that we could be entering nuclear war, because when these demons get in control, they always create massive wars. And I feel the conditions for that are developing rapidly. Chris, any comments before we wrap up on that?
Where we've already been in this war, whether it be a civil war in the U.S. or a technically a world war. A lot of this is about propaganda. A lot of this is in proxy. We're fighting two proxy wars right now: the one against Russia and the one against Iran. It's
I
happening.
know. I mean, we're in World War III already.
Right.
The chances
It,
that it'll go nuclear are increasing, and that's what frightens me. That's why I'm talking about it.
oh, the U.S. has done such a great job of launching missiles on empty or virtually empty Houthi sites. So might as well keep going that way instead of really trying to solve the problem.
Well, let's
Again,
wrap up.
right, right.
It's just a mess right now, and I keep reporting on this every day. I prepare for the show, and I look at all the news out there, and I'm saying, what insanity all of this is. I mean, I can't. It's like, have we woken up in the middle of a bad nightmare? Unfortunately, we have.
And you know why they pounced? You know why the rogue nations, the adversarial nations, know they can defeat us, or at least take some chunks out of our defenses, because they know our current leadership only worries about optics rather than solving problems.
And also worries about making sure that they're the right DEI, they're doing diversity, equity, and inclusion, that they're not committing microaggressions. Forget about teaching the children anything in the schools. We don't need to do that. We need to confuse them about their gender. We need to produce dysfunctional zombies. And we are creating the useless people that this guy Noah Harari in the World Economic Forum has said we are all useless except for the very few Bill Gateses who self-declare themselves to be the oligarchs and the Ubermensch of the future. Of course,
Well,
we
the
can't say
American,
Ubermensch
yep,
because
the American left is
that's
striving
bad.
for that. Yep.
Pardon me?
Oh, the American left is striving for that goal.
And it's striving for that goal. Okay, let's wrap up, Chris. In the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. I mean, in this nightmare that we're going through, there's still there's light shining. I mean, watch the Sound of Freedom movie about this pedophilia. It's a brilliant movie. Uh, Take a look at Eric Metaxas, who's written a brilliant book on the letter to the American church, arguing for, from the pulpit, getting involved in talking about these political issues as evil, and not doing what the German church did in the Nazi period, which is go along with the Nazis. Don't go along with the woke agenda. Don't put the rainbow flag in the pulpit to say, well, everybody's welcome here. We're just interested in salvation. We're not going to get through to salvation through transgenderism. Transhumans are another hubris, another thought that we can put ourselves on the throne of God. God created this place. God rules. And in the spirit of 2nd Chronicles 7:14, we need to get on our knees and repent. We need a revival. We need to say fundamentally that we ask God's forgiveness for letting this get to this point. These millions of babies being slaughtered in the womb, cut apart by abortionists, taken out of the school, but allowing Satan clubs to be in the high school. I want everybody to join me in this. If we get involved, God's going to rely on that first. If we don't do what God's calling us to do, the judgment of God is going to be exceptionally severe. If we do get on our knees and repent, which is the Bible cure for moments like this in history, God will hear our prayer and heal our land. And I think we're at the moment of an intervention of God being necessary. I just hope that it will not be in the form of, a nuclear war that we have to go through before we get to the other side. God did not create the human race to fail. God did not allow Satan to have him reign. Satan will lose. And It's going to take a battle, and we have to join that battle. It's a spiritual battle, and we have to do our part, protect our children, protect our society, and say no to these demons. We are not going to go along. We're not going to use their pronouns. We're not going to speak their double talk language. This is not George Orwell's 1984 because we don't comply. We don't go along with it. We say no. We tell these demons to get back to hell where they belong and take all their social justice theory with them. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today, it's Wednesday. It's February 21st, 2024. We're doing these podcasts on The Truth Central, thetruthcentral.com every weekday. Go to the website, thetruthcentral.com. You can see all the channels we're on. There's a lot of good information on that website. If you like the show, please follow our sponsors, both Swiss America and also My Vital C. As I say, I'm 77 years old. I've been taking My Vital C for 5 years, and I will tell you, I believe it has exceptional longevity properties. I've been more active in these years than I have been in my entire life. And I thank God for the time to serve God. As Dr. Jerome Corsi, thank you for joining us. We welcome you back tomorrow. God bless.